Day on WCCR, trying to match the excitement in my voice there, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on, you guessed it, revolution.radio. It's freedomslips.com as well, where it's more than just radio, so jump in the chat room if you can. This is show number 429.
9, 20, and 400.
Wow, that was dramatic pause right there. It's on...
That's an aha.
Yes. Okay, so it's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app, listen from anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. I'm going to drop that soon if I don't get my darn Grace tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris's show, it was a great show as usual. She always has great shows, great guests, great discussions. Today she had Chip Tatum on, and they were talking about politics and UFOs. Sie mute! Hey! That's Tones. Hey, shout out to Tones in there. In the chat room. But you know what? About Solaris's show, if you don't know who we're talking about, if you're listening to this from an archive, you need to get into the station's archives. It's only $5 US a month, or thereabouts. And you can get access to not just her shows or our shows, but all the host shows. And you can listen to them when you feel like you've got the time to listen. You don't have to shut whole life down, jump online and listen while we're online. You can actually listen to the archives, which is really cool. And that's what we used to, right? We're used to this thing. You download the thing, you watch it when you feel like it. And that way you can binge listen if you want. Hashtag SSO. If you've got a whole block of time, you can listen to a bunch of our shows. All right, so that's pretty cool. Mackie and I, because we live in Australia, and because our lands were previously inhabited by custodians that looked after the land, that we say this acknowledgement, and I think it's very important that wherever you are, that you learn who those people were, the peoples that look after the custodians of the lands. Before, of course, all of that land grabbing went on, and we just considered those custodians as fauna. Didn't even care about them. Didn't even give them the vote. Argued, gave them some beads in a mirror, and stole their land from them because they didn't have any clue about what things meant. What was the value of something? A mirror's nothing, right? They could have said, you know what, we want your entire land. If you want to we want a swap, we'll do a swap. We can have your pitiful little country. If you want our huge nation, sure, let's swap. We'll own your one. And they would have never have agreed to that. So because of those, we believe that the custodians of the lands did such a better job than we're doing. We're raping the land, we're pillaging, we're selling it as though it's nothing. And we're, in Australia's case, Mackie, we're even blowing up old artifacts.
47,000-year-old caves with continued inhabitant evidence. 47,000. Blow it up.
Blow it up.
I'll build another one tomorrow.
Why? Because there's something we want to sell that's in the ground that we want to get at. Let's just blow it up. Doesn't matter, right? And they admitted it, too, that they did it. So as a result of all of that, I want to get past the intro text. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Where I live, it's the Dark and Young people, and where Mackie lives, it's the...
For me, it is the Dark people.
Oh, nice rolling of those R's.
That's what the Germans do.
There's quite a few nations that do it, but yes, the Germans do it, yes.
No, only the Germans.
It's the Germans. 9! And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Mackie, can you believe how...
I cannot.
You can't.
I cannot.
Already.
I can't believe it.
On the blind. Don't know what it is. No
what
topic.
That I shouldn't believe. Tell me.
See, that's the kind of willing participant we wish that our listeners are. My goodness, what a perfect example, Mackie, of that.
Right?
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so if we were writing next week, if we were being creative and coming up with things for next week, I don't think we'd hit the mark at all, because I thought what was crazy is now happening. It's daily, right?
Yeah.
It's so crazy. So we during the lockdown, I have got to tell everyone, during the lockdown, Sydney has there's a couple of rivers, okay, that feed in to where our water sources are, and we have a very large dam, so similar in I suppose in the US and across the Rocky Mountains, and Nevada is fed by, which is that one that I discovered just recently, Maggie. That big dam in the US, right?
Yeah, Hoover.
Yes, yeah. I can't remember the name because I have Hoover in my head as a vacuum cleaner, and I can't get away from that. I can't associate it with the dam. So, what's funny? Because there is a funny story here, and that is that there is a cocktail of metals now coming from what's known as the Tarmor mine, and while we've been in lockdown, the government that we live in agreed. That's my dog scratching itself. Just no fear, it's not me. It's not me. I'm not doing it, or doing it to someone else. And that is that while we've been in lockdown, they've agreed to be able to mine within our aquifer, which will undoubtedly result in pollution of some kind. But we're already seeing it from this Bargo and Nepean rivers, and with a cocktail of metals from a mine that's upstream. And I don't know about you, I figured that we would have had people on this so it didn't happen. But hey, I don't know anything, clearly. Is that right, Mackie?
You know nothing? Terminate. Exterminate. Terminate.
You have 10 seconds to comply.
Look, it's what's happening in Australia is just incredible. I've been looking at this whole spectrum, and I know there's a couple of stories I want to share with you. But just think about this though for a second. All the things that are happening this year, it started happening, I guess, in October, November, December last year with the horrendous bushfires in Australia. That for me, that's
worst ever,
off in a way. Worst ever on record, and in fact, globally. They were the global worst forest fires ever.
That's right.
Never has there been more acreage burned than in that period in Australia we just had behind us. Nowhere. Nothing has burned as much forest as well. This is just it's not a good distinction, is it? It's not a good thing to lay claim to. But then then we had floods, and some of the soil erosion came with that as well, and as you would think, and then so heat, fire, floods. Then we have the coronavirus. We had storms. The biggest storm. This is what I'm hearing. The biggest storms ever just hit the west coast of India ever.
That's right.
Ever.
Yep. Superstorm.
Nothing. Yep. Yeah. And people walking home 2,000 kilometers. This one guy went from India. He was working. He was a guest. Well, he's like a transient worker, and he was walking home to his village. And he came to his village, and there was nothing left. And I guess so literally he walked 2,000 kilometers because he lost his job because of COVID-19.
Yeah,
gets to his village and just blown away by a storm. And there was this really crazy piece of news footage where this. It wasn't a huge catastrophe, but it just goes to show how quickly things can change. There was a big piece of land, 800 meters by 800 meters, I want to say roughly, right? Mm-hmm. And there were probably 5-6 houses on it, and it was just swept away. It was like water,
like a tsunami, right?
Well, it's sort of, except the land was completely intact. The entire land detached from the rest of the land and was sort of gurgled out to sea.
Wow.
And then dragged under. Now, nobody, luckily, that was up in Scandinavia. Nobody, luckily, got hurt. But my point here is these things can happen in a heartbeat, in a flash. And things change quicker than we can possibly fathom. And the funny thing here is this. So there's the thing they've posted online, the calendar for.
Oh, I love it! Yeah.
Had leaked, and I want to quickly just to give you a bit of few thought bubbles. So we've had the locusts. I was going to say the locusts in Africa. Never had locusts like that ever. This is also the year of the 17-year cicada. Every 17 years in the States, cicadas. This particular form of cicada emerges.
That's right.
And this is probably, they're looking around 2020. Oh man, if we had to wait another year. But yes, well, That's also happening. See, a pandemic. Then, of course, know what it says here for June. Protestant riots. Yeah, that's we got that. Not over yet, by the way. And in fact, it'll lead to another spike. I would think in infections. If it doesn't, if this doesn't lead to another spike, there's no pandemic. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
If these hundreds of thousands of people, right, more or less ill protected, if that doesn't lead to another spike, that the whole COVID-19 is a hoax, and I don't know what's going on, right? And then there's July, we get a solar flare, Yellowstone. Actually, Yellowstone eruption in August. Yellowstone is murmuring, and there's something that's happening. Alien invasion is my favorite for September. It's like there's this meme going on the Facebook as well. A couple of aliens, prepping themselves, going, oh, I'm a bit nervous. We up next.
That's right.
And then in December we're gonna hit by an asteroid. But look, the reason I'm saying all of this is because of the craziness. And I'll be honest with you. Again, I have nothing against Trump. I should say I had nothing against him, really. Not really. I really don't, right? But a couple of things that really touched me and made me think quite differently about a whole bunch of stuff is number one, he marches and gets a photo up in front of that church with who needs to read anyway? Reading is overrated. And he gets protesters billy clubbed out of the way, tear gassed out of the way, so he can have that photo up. So I think that was a brain fart, to be honest. That's one. And the other one was the Netflix documentary on Epstein. Now, if you haven't watched it, I urge you to watch it. It actually goes where I wanted it to go. Because Dave, we talked about this, and I thought, they're not going to go there. They so went there.
They went there. Yeah.
They went to all the places I wanted them to go. And people are outraged, Jeffrey Epstein, this and that. No, take a step back. He didn't act on his own. He didn't live in a vacuum, right? He was part of a huge circle of abusers. He was an enabler, and he was probably one of the key people in it.
That's the key point right there, right?
Yeah. But the others, they're still out there.
Hang on.
They're still
all of the others. Oh.
Yeah, and the girls are very, very clear. The young women, though. Young women are very clear in whom they are saying is in fact guilty, right? And I'm not saying anything new here. This is not. You can Google it if you watch it. You'll leave. Prince Andrew is one, right?
Yep.
Dershowitz.
His interview was a train wreck.
Oh my God, wasn't it ever?
No wonder the Queen basically said, "Look, you're on your own. I'm stepping away from this." Yeah.
She didn't celebrate his birthday, which just happened recently, his 60th.
Yeah.
There was like 400 people for his brother.
It's like, I have nothing else to say to you for the rest of my life, which, however long that is, but I'll tell you, the Queen can't be alive forever. And that's a big call.
Another unfortunate plane crash.
Accidented.
Ghislaine, who was, Epstein's companion and key recruiter, and there were others. I mean, in fact, Weinstein was named as one of the abusers. As I said, Dershowitz, his defense attorney, who also defended what's the sportsman who allegedly killed his wife. Anyway, you know what I mean. He was in the Bronco. He ran
That's
away
the white Bronco. Yeah,
that's the one. So he defended OJ
Simpson. Yeah.
And
I haven't seen it yet. But I'm going to.
I urge you.
Yeah, tonight. It's a tonight film.
You must, and you watch the first 3 episodes and go, this is pretty bad, and you realize just how long the authorities have tried to get him, especially the Florida police chief there. He tried real hard and just couldn't get anywhere, and then he realized that all these people that Trump appointed to his presidency also enabled Epstein.
Wow.
It's astounding. Look, you'll see it. You'll get it. And then the last episode, it's only a 4-parter, so the whole thing is about 4 hours, right? A little bit less. And the last bit, my favorite bit. I don't want to take it away. Once you watch it, I'll discuss it on the air with you, Dave. But the fourth episode definitely goes there. But I've done some googling since, and then because that's the fastest way to the research these days. I can't be bothered to get my story behind down to the library. All the investigations seem to have come to nothing. There's like Ghislaine is but see, this I find is astounding. Because the girls are still there and they're still pursuing all the suits. 2 days before his death, Epstein transferred the vast majority of his wealth to the Virgin Islands. Okay.
Yeah, right. He did it. Sure. Sure he did.
Exactly. So that's what happened.
And where's that lady?
Ghislaine?
Yeah.
She's in London, I think.
Yeah, sure. With access to all that money and spending up. Yeah.
Yeah, with Prince Andrew. And I think that a lot of people have been suicided. They were sort of caught up on the edges here. And make no mistake that Anthony Bourdain was an outspoken critic against Harvey Weinstein. Outspoken critic. Like he was supporting his girlfriend massively in the Me Too movement. Did he kill himself? Honestly, no, I don't think he did. I don't think Anthony Bourdain did. But I mean, look, I believe something fishy happened there. So, but just think about this. All these things.
The fact that the palace asked for that story never to run.
There you go.
In the first place, there's big power. We're talking about the most massive powerful elites group on the planet with the most independent wealth compared to the rest of the nation and all the nations, the entire planet. They're the ones who are named.
Correct.
It's some that's so crazy that the power they've got can make these things just disappear.
Yeah. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all of this... Oh, there's no problems here.
There's no problem.
Look over here.
What's over there?
Puppy tail. Look over the puppy tail. The reason I'm mentioning all of these things, and there's actually a point to this, right now, with all of this going on and everything that's happening, right now is the perfect time for disclosure. Right now. Because it just can't get any more nuts. The people... No. See, the thing is, you have to introduce these kinds of momentous announcements at the right time.
When there's chaos.
When there's chaos. Because right now, people are... I mean, we are so far out of our comfort zone, it's not even funny. There's a pandemic, and hundreds of thousands of people globally march in the streets, more or less ill-protected from that pandemic, if there's one. And not only that, crazy weather, crazy upheavals. Hong Kong just about to be consumed entire by China. I mean,
like the blob.
You couldn't ask for better time to bring about disclosure, and
because what else could happen?
No, but it's just been another thing at this point. It's just been another thing. It's like, because people are now in a state of mind, Dave.
Yeah,
it's such chaos.
Radical change.
Yeah, if you just threw that on top of the heap, people go, oh yeah, well look, I mean, pandemic is worse than disclosure, clearly. Oh well, so we hope. And these riots are a real thing. Right? People have got killed. I mean, you know what? Really, one of the things that bothered me the most.
What was that?
Was that when this old guy, it was like a 70-year-old guy, approached a cop for something. He was a protester, clearly, but he was like 70-something.
That's right.
And he was brutally, quite forcefully pushed and fell backwards and hit his head.
And blood was coming out his ears.
But that didn't bother me. I mean, of course it bothered me. You know what bothered me? The cop that had pushed him looked and then just walked off.
The other policeman said, "There's blood coming out his ears."
Yeah, you could hear it.
Yeah.
And none of the police stopped. You know who stopped? It was a person in a military uniform. It might have been National Guard, I don't know, right? But it was a person that wore the combat fatigues that actually, from what I can see in the video, came to the aid of this man. He apparently he's okay. He's not dead, right? And then but see, the thing is, this is it. This is the thing. Technology has changed our lives forever.
Because we can see this, like it changed the Vietnam War.
Yeah. Absolutely. With the life, I mean, they stopped war reporting when they saw the body bags. No, we don't want any more body bags.
Yeah, that's right.
Imagine if you saw how they died. I mean, forget about that. No, but see, when we watched George Floyd being executed,
so
we watched
awful.
His execution.
That's right. That's what we did. Yeah.
We watched. Yeah, this was a snuff video. It's a snuff video.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
If you want to know what a snuff video is, you watched it. It's him being filmed while somebody's choking him to death.
Yeah.
I don't care what the surrounding circumstances. He might have taken some drugs. I don't care. You don't put your knee and your butt, not just your knee. He put his body weight on this guy's neck.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care how big a guy you are. I don't know how many benches you press and whatever. You can have a neck like an ox. If that windpipe is at all affected, like crushed, whatever, right? You're done. And I don't care how big a guy you are, right? I don't. Remember
also that your main arteries to your brain are on the sides of your neck.
Completely. And then this is the chokehold that if you know what you're doing, you can actually send someone to sleep, and if you hold a bit longer, they will die.
That's right.
And this is what happened here. Right?
Yeah.
And this is what we watched his execution in excruciating detail and stretched out over the last few minutes of his life. We heard his last words calling out for his mother, saying he can't breathe, and the cop's expression didn't change. Because I made a point of looking at it, and I wanted to see the cop's face. It didn't change.
No.
He just looked around. It was just like he had stepped on an ant. He didn't even notice it. And it is that which terrifies me, because you can't argue with people like that.
Do you know, Mackie, I think that's where the most of the reaction comes from, was the complacency at which this occurred. It was a job. He was doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, and like I said last week, if any of the bystanders had tackled him off George Floyd, they'd be in jail now. They would be in jail
or
now.
dead too.
You know?
Because you try and go and tackle a cop, and you're going to go down. There
was a very big argument, a debate, I should say, philosophical, ethical debate that arose out of World War II. Because a lot of Germans said, "Well, I was just following orders, right?" And people say, "Oh, well, that's not an excuse. You followed orders. Well, you should have exercised your moral and ethical judgment and stepped in, even if it jeopardized your own life. That's what you should have done. That's what the Americans or the Allies told those Nazis, right? Or
that's
Nazi
right.
sympathizers, or even just regular soldiers, right? That's what they told them. You should have stood up."
Yeah.
What we saw with George Floyd, that's Nazi Germany. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, because the bystanders were terrified. I imagine they were terrified to interfere. Because I'll be next. They're going to take me down, right? I don't know what's going to happen to me if I tackle a cop. I'm charged with assault of a cop. And how do you think I'd be doing it then, right? I don't care what color skin I have. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is that blind, not even blind, but it's this terrifying obedience that we have, or even the fear that we feel of these authority figures that they have. And this is something the founding fathers didn't want for America. I mean, the rest of the world, it's a mess, but I guess the French were a bit different. But that's what the founding fathers didn't want. That's why they wrote into I think it's the Second Amendment, right? The right to bear arms. That's why it's there. So you can defend yourself. So you don't have to be subjected to the tyranny that we see today. It's tyranny.
Yeah, that's
we
what it
see
is.
these stormtroopers, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And stormtroopers crying out loud.
Yeah.
And the president, and this is why I brought him up earlier, the president said, "Oh, I want to take a photo up here at this church," which is a very famous church. Every president has been there, etc., blah, blah, whatever. And he goes down there, holds the Bible, but they're billy clubbing and tear gassing people out of the way, so the president can. It's no other reason. I mean, these are peaceful protests. They're just hanging out protesting. They're not.
It's like Hunger Games, Mickey.
It's like Hunger Games. Only
Isn't
this
it?
is real. It's
I
real
know.
now, right?
I know. But who thought that the elite would be, doing all the things like in Hunger Games, just for a photo opportunity?
It's astounding.
Yeah.
I am, and you know what? Now that I look at his face and the way he speaks, I thought about this a lot, and I'm very careful when I express myself on this level and with these subjects. George W. Bush Jr. would have done a better job, and do you know why he would have done a better job with this whole scenario? Because he listened to his advisors. He was a bit of a muppet.
Basically, yeah, he was a muppet with 100 hands up his butt, right?
But he would have listened.
Yeah.
Donald Trump doesn't listen to anyone, I don't think. He has gotten rid of every single, voice of reason. I mean, he had the three generals. That initially I thought, 3 generals. He's a bit of a hawk. These were called the adults in the room. He got rid of them all, or they resigned. All of these, retired generals. They all.
That's right.
I can't work with this guy. And as a president, yes, you are the commander in chief, and everybody serves at your pleasure, and I get that, right? But ultimately, nobody is smart enough to run the country, let alone handle multiple crises.
That's why you have those advisors.
That's why you have the people that know what they're doing. Yes.
I always thought, Mickey, there'd be a CIA handler that would be in control of him.
Yeah. No, clearly not. Clearly not.
Where's that?
Where is that?
Unless, of course, this is an agenda. Sorry to do that. Sorry to do
Fair
that.
enough.
Right?
Fair enough.
Who knows?
And this is really where we're at. This is now, like I said, right now, this year, 2020, this year is the perfect year for disclosure to say, yeah, hey, you know what? We're actually not alone. And these are our friends from Alpha Centauri, and they brought a whole bunch of vaccines with them. Thanks, buddy. Right?
I completely think that the Brookings report could be thrown in the bin now. There isn't... No, that's, to be honest, right? You know, the end of society as we know it. People won't go to jobs, won't go to work. Well, we're not going to work. Right? Some of these things being lifted. We're doing work. But what I'm seeing is, you're right. I think a juggler doing 4 balls can be thrown another ball and still juggle.
Yeah.
It's not gonna ruin the whole experience, whatever that is right now. I don't think we're gonna see that. So, but I wanted to take this, Mackie, as one of the segues, if we had to back the truck up for a little bit in that conversation, to the Australian police. Now, we've always talked about the police from all around the world becoming militarized because they've started to wear armor. They have, in some cases, automatic weapons. They have helmets. It's not just the SWAT team. It's not just those tactical officers you might find during, I don't know, riots or things like that. This is where the military are lending, in some cases, some of their old kit, or suggesting, hey, you know what, you should be using some of this stuff that we've got. We've got some really cool tech. Maybe that would help you enforce the law, right? So law, Mickey, in the Panopticon was all about being able to self-correct, about being able to adjust make sure your moral compass is in place so that you're not misbehaving because you always think you're being watched. Well, the Australian police authorities they're buying up sound weapons. These are the military weapons which will cause people to disperse. They're non-lethal weaponry developed in the DARPA funding and designed as a long-range acoustic device, and it was used in the G20 protest back in Pittsburgh, if you can remember back that far back, in 2009. But our police are going to start using these weapons. Rather than putting them, they're having their shields and their batons and their helmets and all that stuff, and the tear gas. Because, I mean, look, I don't know about you, but clearly, if I was in the police force right now, I'd be planning for riots to occur. Oh, we need these. Like, at what point was there a board meeting where they decided, oh, the world's going to manure.
It was
we're going to need these things, right?
You didn't get the memo.
I didn't. What, again? Again? I thought I'd get the golden ticket in the mail, right? Where they say, look, just come to the bunker. Don't tell anyone. Because we'll be the outer skin of the planet dwelling people, and those people underground won't care for us, right?
There you go. That's what it is. There you go. No, I'm so... Look, you know what I feel. You know how I feel about that. That's the thing.
Yeah. So, but that story leads me into this, because, in America, sure, the police aren't good enough, so we're just going to send the military in. So this was the 1st of June. What are we at now? We're at the 7th. So Trump deploys U.S. military. Now, from what I understand, it was really only the military police, and at best it was the National Guard. But he said he'll do the same everywhere if the local governments fail to contain it. Now, what have we seen? Have we seen the continued, or not seen the continued rioting? I wonder. I feel like the Morpheus moment where he goes, you think that's air you're breathing?
Well, that's it. I mean, and this is really what brings us, back to the whole purpose of this show, right? I mean, what is reality? What is real? And does it matter? The answer is yes, it matters. And why does it matter? Because ultimately, we're the sum of our experiences. So you might believe that you've got a higher consciousness, a higher self, and a higher whatever. That's all goodness, right? And I believe that too. Point is, it colors who you are by what you do here and how you think and how you react, etc., etc. So I don't care what your belief system is. Ultimately, how you act and who you are in any given situation reflects upon your entire manifestation. Dave, do you know what I mean?
I was talking about this with my friends, who I've got to say I've lost 2 biological parents, and I still have the parent that adopted me, and he's still I call him my dad. He's still alive. One of my friends, Mickey, I was talking to him about today about their dad dying, but the mum's having some trouble with trying to cope with that and release the grief. And what my example was the amount of time that you spend in grief land per day does affect your personality going forward. If you're not able to address it quickly and easily and effectively and start to see it in a different way,
absolutely,
the prolonged state of being in that state does negatively impact. Like if you had a pie graph of your future personality, if 2/3 of it is from hurt, it does mean that you're going to protect yourself from it effectively at some point. You're going to then have to cover that up, and rather than let it just go naturally with time and releasing it and moving on. So the percentage of time is how you're made up. Now, Meki, this stuff right now, this year, is the craziest year that in my 53 of them that I've lived through. I don't think that calendar thing was poignant.
It was, and it started in my mind. It started in October, November.
It did last year,
right? So, so and it's just. But the thing is, that every year or every period in your life is marked by certain events. You know, the collapse of the Soviet Union. You know, the Bay of Pigs, Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, the
Duck
Black Plague. I mean, okay, all of that. But this year, this year is a continuous clobbering of new things all the time. Now, not new and you know, like a brand new thing in the world. Oh, this has never happened before. No, but new certainly in scale and new in reach, and but it's relentless. It's relentless from October to November last year, right? It just kept on firing, and you know, I think it's a fair question to ask by many people, right? What's next? What could possibly next? I mentioned this. You all know Foot Road Flats. If you don't, it's a New Zealand a comic strip about a farmer, and this is one of them. And I got it here somewhere on my shelves. A farmer is clinging on to a log in the floodwaters.
In the floodwaters, yep.
Yeah, and fire. Sorry, yeah, he said fire, flood. What next? As rats are crawling onto his log, and that's where we are. That's completely where we are in Australia. Fire, floods, pestilence, and then what? Riots, and then what? Disclosure, alien invasion, asteroids, zombies. You know, the dead. You know, coming back to life. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow there's a new story. Oh, you know what? The dead are coming to life and are eating the brains of the living. Oh, yeah, of course they are.
Isn't that the seventh seal or something, Maggie?
Well, all the seals are, yeah.
all of them.
The seventh seal. And the ocean became blood. And it's really, it is that level of, like, it almost feels like we're at the end of a movie, a B movie or a C movie, and they didn't know how to end it. So, yeah, it's just everything happens.
It all happens.
Yes, it all happens. Or like a really poorly designed game where, you know, you're fighting
the last boss.
Yeah.
But then all of them appear. Yeah.
Yeah, all the bosses had to fight.
We lost funding.
Yes, funding. just finish it. Somehow just wrap it up. And I want to share something with you. This is shared by a friend of mine on Facebook. I give me a chuckle. Yeah. If the United States saw what the United States is doing in the United States, the United States would invade the United States to liberate the United States from the tyranny of the United States. And you know what?
And we all laughed.
Yeah, no, look, I'm not picking on the States. I mean,
No.
Chinese are not better, and I mean, seriously, I mean, look at the state of the world. Look at this. We're treating the world like a toilet. That's how we're treating it like a toilet. And go on.
I'm just going to say, my example last year, before all of these crises, it was if China was doing what America was doing, and going into countries unannounced and uninvited and causing havoc and taking out the leaders, we'd all be upset.
Yes.
Right?
Because we're the good guys.
There you go, hummingbird, but no one cares. That's exactly right. Yeah. If we were on the opposite team, it just seems that it's our team that's doing it.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, Meki, with those 10 countries that are trying to get together and create their own 5G and the Wolverine pack, Meki, the Wolverines. It's now got multiple countries on board. It's not just a bunch of Australians thinking, with big sideburns like one of our combined friends who sort of looks like he could play the stunt double. Because I swear that he could easily. It's not that. But all these people are joined in.
Yeah.
Now, I remember when Obama was in power and his style and charisma, whether you liked it or hated him as a president, it's fine. He has a ton of charisma and he's very well spoken, intelligent. He comes across as a person who's educated and can get stuff done. Right? That's just putting that out there. I truly believe it's obviously clearly my own problem that all of the world leaders should be working towards the single goal of world peace. Right? I'm grossly incorrect, Meki. Right? What kind of drugs am I smoking? Why am I handing out flowers? Right? Because I feel so opposed to what's currently going on that I feel like a Hare Krishna right now. It's the 180. They're all like, how can we beat up any more people? Yeah. Look how crazy everything else.
Yeah, and this is, you're right. It's I make a point of not looking at accidents when I drive. So when I'm driving, traffic slows down because people are Googling, right? They're ogling the accident. Rubbernecking, yeah, that's it. I make a point of not doing that at all. I encourage my children and family not to do that either, so we don't. So we just get past it as quickly as possible, not even a glance, right? Because I assume help is there. If there's help required, I will stop and help, but I will not rubberneck. Mm-hmm. This, I don't know where to look. And in my car, I can look forward, right? And then I see the road and I can get past the accident. With this, I can't swear on air, but there's car wrecks everywhere. Everything is on fire. Everything is burning. And you look around and you can't look anywhere without seeing something that is just horrendous. And you're thinking, what happened? How did we get to this place?
Yeah.
And I bring it back to the hypothesis, Dave. Mm. And it has to, I guess, for us, more or less. Because I look at the numbers here. Okay, it's almost 7 million people diagnosed with COVID-19. I mean, if it's a thing, there's 7 million of them, and 400,000 more than have now passed away because of it, and that's the number that we know about. So these are the numbers we know about. So if COVID-19, the virus, is a real thing, then these are the numbers. And in America, that means that about 10% of all people have the virus. And I say this because there were 20 million tests done, Dave.
Yeah.
And you can only know if someone has got COVID if they've been tested. That's the only way
right.
you know, right? Mm-hmm. So you got 20 million tested, 2 million have it, and 100,000 died, right? So you can do your own math. I think there's probably quite a large number of people that haven't been diagnosed that have it, and there are a lot of people that are dying. And I didn't think that this particular event would be large enough for what we needed in the hypothesis, but I think it just might be, like we discussed, because we have no idea how many other people have died as a direct result, not necessarily just from COVID-19, Dave, from the knock-on effects. What are the knock-on effects? The knock-on effects: I've lost my job, I can't afford food. Mm-hmm. This guy I spoke about earlier that walked 2,000 kilometers from in India.
Crazy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
From he got a lift with a truck driver for a bit of it,
Doesn't matter.
Be that as it may, he from wherever he was.
Can you imagine that impossible task?
Yeah.
In front of you.
I know. Wherever he went back to his hometown, which has just been devastated by the storm.
Yep.
Superstorm. Yeah. But he said he saw so many people just dying of exhaustion, giving up on the side of the road. And I think that the true death toll of this whole year, everything that has happened here, I mean, the fires, I mean, we're talking about 1 billion dead animals in Australia. 1 billion.
1 billion.
That we think, right?
Yep.
That's just animals, right?
Because the fire completely cremated everything.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Everything.
And the virus or whatever this event is, and the knock-on effect, people not getting treatment in hospitals because for whatever reason, obviously treatment is not available. So
maybe the queue was too long and they just went home and died at home.
In India, so this is what's happening in India right now, right? In India, people are lining up at the hospitals, and the lines are 100,000, maybe 2,000, maybe 5,000 people long, whatever it is, right? It's a multitude of people. In the hope, they're sick people, by the way. In the hope of getting treatment. In the hospital itself, there's like 3-4 people to a bed, they're on the floor, but they're the lucky ones. They're in the hospital. They're getting some kind of treatment. They're the lucky ones.
How do you hope to go to hospital in India, Mickey, if you live in a shanty town?
You can't.
That's right. There's nothing available to them. Yeah.
Nothing available. Yeah. And that's why I don't believe the Chinese numbers at all. I mean,
at all.
At what's happening in the world, it's a complete bogus number. It's bull. It's BS. I'm calling it BS. Whatever China says the number is, BS. And then I'm looking at the numbers here in Brazil. Brazil is now the second highest in the world, right?
That's right.
Spain, Italy.
670,
India has surpassed, I knew it would. India had surpassed Italy in number of infections.
Yeah.
But the number of dead is not as high simply because they just don't know. I reckon they just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Spain's numbers truly haven't done anything for a while. It's like the people who would type in the numbers in of dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But that's it. I mean, we don't have...
Brazil's doing 30,000 new cases a day.
Yeah.
India at the moment is rising through the medal tally here, and they're up at 10,000 per day. But these are exponential.
Yeah, those countries still out. It's not over. This thing isn't over, guys.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Again, I'm not going to go into the argument.
Yeah.
And so I think enough people will die here, Dave, for the hypothesis to hold true, which worries me, because if that is true, and I'm not saying that we are super geniuses or whatever, but if the hypothesis holds true, then there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on that is connected to that, and soon enough, maybe 450, we'll talk about it again. It seems at the right time.
Yeah.
But it makes sense for this to happen now, because we are approaching the critical number of people on the planet. And I can tell you right now, there's no way that any ascension is going to happen with the frequency level of this planet. Not a chance in hell, even if that many hadn't died. Yeah. Because I believe that you have to have a certain frequency level, at least as a minimum, as a baseline, right?
Yeah.
Before anything like this can happen. And I think this is just the event. Is this a civilization-ending event? No, it is not. It's a civilization-changing event, though. Like 9/11.
And how much change? We're going to remember this for the rest of our lives. Oh. One of the memes, Becky, that I had in a little slide deck while we were talking about it was Doc talking to Marty, and he's sitting in the DeLorean, and he goes, "Whatever you do, don't set it to 2020." See, that's really funny. We know how bad this thing is. We're in the middle of it, but this is going to be one of those things that we'll tell our grandkids. I remember the time, 1957 it was, I remember it was. We're going to have a story about 2020 and how crazy it was, and it's only going to be those who make it through. Mickey, the last story I just want to bring up here is, this came from the New Zealand Herald. It's a newspaper turned digital media, and this is from the 29th of May, so it should have made last week's, but I didn't find it until this week. And it's the battle is on. China warns it will no longer be intimidated by the US. And these are the kind of this. I'm not saying this is. I'm trying to be careful to take all of these news stories for what they are, but then together, what is the message? So all of the Western media is really doing a beat up on China. Now, I'm sure China is doing a similar thing to show face and to keep strength to try and counter some of this, but once you start to counter each other, you're talking about escalation. And it might be only words, but still this is the messaging. And I watched a story on our most right-wing television news with Peter Credlin, talking to experts who were all equally as right-wing as possible, talking about we should just just take back all the assets. And this messaging is still happening. And this is the thing that I'm talking about, Mickey, and that is that there doesn't seem to be any progression away. No one's stepping away from this. Everyone's saying, well, we need to set up, a task force, this Wolverines, to understand what it's going to mean to bring back manufacturing, turn our back to China, and just cease all of this. And that's what they're talking about. I'm not talking about it. They're talking about it. And this part of being what we do, Mickey, we commentate on the world news, and we have some opinions. We try not to put too much of our own thought into this other than our emotion, because we're not making these stories are published. These are all published stories. They're out there, the media, and when you watch so many different slants coming from different news organizations, you can sort of you can slice them all away and find what the true nugget of the story is. And all I'm seeing is the same messaging now. It's so right-wing, it's so aggressive, it looks like it's designed for conflict.
Oh, completely.
So it does upset me, because I really thought that we'd be on the other foot. I think we wouldn't be using this one. But remember the Mayan calendar talking about going through the dark rift, and on one side is happiness, the other side is not. It's the opposite. It's the war side, and this dark rift would be the time. And every time I look at the Nostradamus quatrains, I end up in the same position. I'm hearing this period of time when it's just chaos. The Bible talks about the tribulation. All of these different things, all these different prophecies have about the same length of runway.
Yeah.
And we're right. It seems like we're in the middle of it.
Well, look, it certainly is. It's a very peculiar time we're inhabiting right now, Dave. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's around the corner. I wouldn't even hazard a guess.
Alien invasion.
All right, but maybe not necessarily alien invasion. I think they're already here.
But disclosure, Mickey. The U.S. Navy already said, these things are real.
I've got this.
And no one blinked an eye.
No, because it's just another thing. Do you remember I spoke to you about the episode of Frasier where John Glenn is actually a guest appearance.
That's right. So they're recording an interview with him, and it's between, but it's still recording.
And he's just left alone and just talking to the tape. He was just recounting what happened and all the things that happened, and they were told not to talk about. And it sort of blends in and out to listening to him, and then between Ross and Frasier in the other side
in the booth, right?
In the booth, yeah. And the things they told us to lie and we couldn't tell, and some of these science fiction movies, he says, they're coming quite close to the truth, etc. And of course, it's tongue in cheek, I guess, to some extent for the Frasier show. But I also believe that this was probably one of the closer things we came to disclosure from an astronaut that has served, and it was just couched in a show over there. Maybe he wanted to. Maybe he had this need to go out and tell. Dan Aykroyd is a huge activist.
Yeah,
and a lot of
he said the Men in Black cut his show.
Correct.
Yeah,
and there's another Frasier episode called The Candidate. And Frasier supports this guy because he does all the right things. He wants to change the world. Frasier really believes in this guy from a political point of view. And then he confides in him, saying, why did you do this, Frasier asked. And then the candidate says, ever since the aliens took me up in their spaceship, they told me we need to change the planet. And he was quite serious. The guy was an experiencer, right, in the show. And he wasn't no one's taking the mickey, but Frasier, of course, portraying, I guess, the skeptical American audience was completely freaked out by that, and could no longer really support the guy, I guess. But he, like the experiencer himself, never once was portrayed as a comical or farcical creature, and he never faltered and he never faltered in his belief either. So my point here is, right, with these two instances of things that happened on that particular show, and the other shows as well in American, I mean, sometimes art is the only outlet, the only valve these people have.
And they usually, they do take advantage of that.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's part of the Frasier show, it's a comedy. Why would you take it seriously? You wouldn't. It's a TV show, you know, you can say whatever you want. And so I always listen out for these things. I read between the lines. And these nuggets and gems, I like to call them, maybe Easter eggs, are few and far between, Dave.
Yeah.
But they are there.
Capricorn 1, Mecky.
Oh, phenomenal.
Right? So you need to watch it, and I don't want to give too much away, but it's instead of using the moon, they use Mars as an example of faking it.
But imagine if that mission Armstrong and Aldrin
burn up in the atmosphere or something. Yeah, imagine that's exactly what the point they were making, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah. You can only accident so many people, right? But they had to.
Well,
can you really?
You know. See, this is actually a really good question. It's the same question as to where does the quantum world begin and the real world end?
Yeah.
How many people can you accident before it's so? See, this is the thing. The Epstein case.
Yeah.
It was easier to accident the one rather than to accident the many. It's all about
to do it inside a jail to do it. And for no one to question it. No, there's no cameras. The cameras were off or something, and the security guard was on holidays.
Yeah.
Part of the system, man. That's right. Yeah.
It's completely Not only, I mean, was it conclusive? No, but they bought themselves a significant amount of time. Now Ghislaine might pass away. Maybe, like you said, Prince Andrew, whatever, a golfing accident. Oh, he swallowed the golf ball. 1 in a million. 1 in a million, boss. 1 in a million.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had an example, but because Mecca, they've actually changed, just letting you know, and the audience know, they've changed the bumpers around now. So they've updated many of the bumpers, and some of them don't start on the old schedule now. So we're going to keep an eye out. I think it's another minute left to 57. I think this is when the bumpers start again. So 9/11, Mecky, we'll never see the footage from the top of the hotel or the service station because it showed the real thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? In 9/11. We're never. There's things about the world that we'll never truly know, but we have. I think we all have a pretty good understanding as listeners to this of what actually happened. Try not to take it too far. Try to just boil it down to the nuggets, and stay there, and try not to draw too much around the outside, because when you do, hey, you might get upset, and we don't want that. We want you to be educated, and that's pretty much where we want you to stay, in the educated world. There's the music. Yay, I was right. It's at the 57 it is now, not 56. So look, it's only a very short break. We'll see you shortly when this break is done on the other side of the hour. And take the time to donate or buy something from the station's website. See you shortly.
Hello and welcome back to David Mackey's Shiny Side Out. Talking about ancient tech, really, but we had a whole hour filled with current affairs, stories, and philosophical outlooks. And hopefully that's your cup of tea. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of ancient tech, and ancient tech and technology is not just machines. We spend a lot of time talking about ancient stone technology, which today is unequaled still. I'm still blown away by the work they did with obsidian, the large stones. I've come across recently, and I will include it into our show for next week, an ancient Indonesian site, which seems to even predate Göbekli Tepe.
How amazing was that revelation?
Yeah, by about 8,000 years.
Yeah.
So and one of the criticisms, and this came from one of the official Indonesian archaeologists, because there's still some contention around as to how old it really is, and the dating and all that, and so there was, of course, always it's always contention and controversy.
Debate.
But Yeah, well, no, debate would mean that both sides are equally accepted, right? So no.
Right.
So the establishment doesn't allow debate. It is really just a deriding. And this was the criticism. It sticks with me in my mind. I read it 2 weeks ago, but I can't forget it. And normally, it says, and I'm not reading it, I'm just quoting from memory. Normally, we find a culture, that was around at the time, and and figure out what happened with that culture, and then we go about finding artifacts and structures and monuments. And I thought to myself, no, that's exactly not how it works. That's exactly how it doesn't work. It never has. We find stuff, and we've got an idea of what it should be, and we try to shoehorn it into what it's meant to mean.
Fit,
My
damn
question
you!
becomes, but the question becomes, how are you explaining Göbekli Tepe? Who's their culture? Who built that? No, it was just some nomads going around the desert and things. Shut up. Not only that, but there are other sites in the world which make absolutely no sense, and we have no idea who built them. We call them the pre-Incan civilizations. Who are they? Oh, I don't know. Pre-Incan. Oh, okay. Oh, fool! Don't you understand? They're pre-Incan. So as soon as you label something, there you go. No further discussion is required.
We can shove it in the bag, Mackie, in the moment we name it something.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
Right.
Done.
And but this is the thing. It's there, and these are monuments are massive. They're like mountain size, right? That's really the point I'm trying to make here, and I will talk about it next week when I get some more information. But it's all around us. We find it all the time. Oh no, no. This is not really what we should worry about at all. No, we should exactly worry about that, because once again we're talking about massive monolithic structures, 20,000 years ago. 20,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe, that snuck up on us. We can't make it go away because it's too big. And that was complete fluke as well. And okay, roll back for a second. This was found by a dude digging up a rock in his field. It wasn't some smart, archaeological expedition. We got all this evidence here, and we've spent 50,000 years thinking about it, and you're all very smart.
Pacing about, drawing a grid, and going, this is where the rock's going to be.
That's it. No, complete flukes. And I just shudder to think how many things today are blown up by these miners that used to be found back in the day when people did the mining and not dynamite and machines. So a lot of stuff we simply don't find anymore because there's no one there to find it. We just blow it up. Well, it's just dust now. Really, that 47,000-year-old cave that had paintings and those signs of continuous habitation.
It was old.
But look, that's the point here we're trying to make. Now, Dave, should we start with first evidence of farming in the Middle East? If we are, then I'll let you do that. Or should we start with mysterious origins of crop plants? What do we think here?
Okay, because you mean take it back to the beginning of that early gatherers piece? Correct. Look, I'm happy to go back to the beginning of that. If you like, I'll take that, and you can take the next one. Buddy. All right. So as Mackie alluded to, this is the first evidence of farming in the Mid-East, 23,000 years ago. Wow, it's like an RSL club, Mackie, getting called out. Yeah. All right, so the summary is, until now, researchers believed farming was invented some 12,000 years ago in an area that was home to some of the earliest known human civilizations. A new discovery offers the first evidence that a trial plant cultivation began far earlier, some 23,000 years ago. It's almost double the length of time in the past. And that would take it pre-Ice Age. Isn't that crazy thinking?
Yeah.
Right? So, until now, researchers believe farming was invented some 12,000 years ago in the cradle of civilization, Iraq, the Levant, parts of Turkey and Iran, an area that was home to some of the earliest known human civilizations. A new discovery by an international collaboration of researchers from Tel Aviv University, Harvard University, is that an IL? Yeah. Bar Ilan University and the University of Haifa offers the first evidence that trial plant cultivation began far earlier, some 23,000 years ago. The study focuses on the discovery of the first weed species at the site of a sedentary human camp on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. It was published in PLOS 1, PLOS 1, and led by Professor Ehud Weiss of Bar Ilan University in collaboration with Professor Marcello Sternberg of the Department of Molecular Biology and Ecology of Plants at TAU's Faculty of Life Sciences, and Professor Ofer Bar Yosef of Harvard University, among other colleagues. This is a quote, while full-scale agriculture did not develop until much later, our studies show that trial cultivation began far earlier than previously believed and gives us reason to rethink our ancestors' capabilities, said Professor Sternberg. Those early ancestors were more clever and more skilled than we knew. I love his grammar too, by the way. You should go back to university. Evidence, he was still in university, there you go. Evidence among the weeds. Although weeds are considered a threat or nuisance in farming today, their presence at the site of the Ohalo 2 People's Camp revealed the earliest signs of trial plant cultivation, some 11 millennia earlier than conventional ideas about the onset of agriculture. The plant material found at the site of the Ohalo 2 people who were fisher hunter-gatherers and established a sedentary, they added an extra syllable, hear that, human camp. The site was unusually well preserved, having been charred, covered by lake sediment, and sealed in low oxygen conditions, ideal for the preservation of plant material. The researchers examined the weed species for morphological signs of domestic-type cereals and harvesting tools, although their very presence is evidence itself of early farming. Another quote, the uniquely preserved site is one of the best archaeological examples worldwide of the hunter-gatherer's way of life, says Professor Sternberg, and he continues, it was possible to recover an extensive amount of information on the site and its inhabitants. He continues, because weeds thrive in cultivated fields and disturbed soils, a significant presence of weeds in the archaeobotanical assemblages retrieved from Neolithic sites and settlements of later age is widely considered an indicator of systematic cultivation, according to the study. Early gatherers. The site bears the remains of 6 shelters and particularly rich assemblage of plants. Upon retrieving and examining approximately 150,000 plant specimens, the researchers determined that early humans had gathered over 140 species of plants. These included 13 known weeds mixed with edible cereals such as wild emmer, I've never heard of it, wild barley, and wild oats. The researchers found a grinding slab, a tool with which cereal starch granules were extracted, as well as a distribution of seeds around this tool, reflecting that the cereal grains were processed for consumption. The large number of cereals showing specific kinds of scars on their seeds indicate the likelihood of those cereals growing in fields, and the presence of sickle blades indicate that these humans deliberately planned the harvest of cereal. The new study offers evidence that the early humans clearly functioned with a basic knowledge of agriculture and, perhaps more importantly, exhibited foresight and extensive agriculture planning far earlier than previously believed. Meki.
So Yeah, so let's back up the truck here for a second. Beep 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 beep, and this is what this is. So again, this is one site, just like the mechanism, Antikythera, like the Blackitepa, all these are the unique things that we are so lucky to find them because they're only the one of them, right? At the time.
That's it.
This was found. So this is I'm gonna propose this here now. This was a place where some people got together, had maybe communal farm, communal garden, whatever, and they started, doing all this stuff. And I also say there were thousands of those all around the place, maybe millions that did that. And maybe it was an outcropping of more organized agriculture, which was introduced by the, God forbid, say the word, Anunnaki, right? The black-headed ones, right? That was us, by the way. We are the black-headed ones, the black-haired ones. We are those people. Well, actually, no, we're not, but they came before us.
That's right.
So it is just another site that was doing this agricultural thing, right?
Yeah.
As we would find today. If today everything stopped, there was catastrophe and everything was buried under 5 meters of soot. In 10,000 years, 20,000 years, people would start digging up things here and there. You might dig up something in India. You find this really primitive oven where they were feeding straw into it or wood to burn. They find like a stone grinding tool. You might even have a mortar and pestle at home made from stone. You might even have that, right?
I've got one of those.
Yeah. Exactly. So my point here is that we take these and then we make all these huge assumptions around it. We say this is what happened, that the other thing happened. This is a single site that was found, which I believe, of course, there were many, thousands and thousands of sites like this. And there was a whole different kind of civilization going on at the same time, maybe prior to us, maybe afterwards as well. And the point here really of this article, though, is that this is pushing everything further back into time. Like when we first started this radio show, this is our 10th year, by the way. We're in our 10th year.
Awesome.
I know, right? If what we said from the start, we will find that these dates will be pushed further into the past as we go along. 10 years ago, we said this. And every year, Dave, this was borne out to be true. We also said, I remember this very clear when I said it, we will find more and more human species popping up.
Yep.
Not ancestor species or cousins. No, us, Homo sapiens, us. Interbreeding. Like we can interbreed. That means we're the same.
We're not talking Lucy.
No,
right?
not at all.
Yeah.
And the truth is, and I didn't make it up. I didn't invent this. I mean, this came from reading ancient texts. This came from understanding history. This came from understanding the context in which we live.
There's so much more to find.
Yeah. And that's the truth of it. That is the truth of it.
Because remember, we're talking about lockstep research that only allows advancement of one step if everyone agrees. And you know what? It takes them so much information, a long time to react to all these new findings that, you've got to admit that it's probably another factor on top of this as well. It goes back. Meki, think about this. So Lucy, whatever, 250,000 years, 250,000 years ago, right? We're starting to find more and more things that take us further and further back. Maybe we'll get to 100,000 or 150,000 or 170. Maybe we'll get back to Lucy's time when we were still humans.
Look.
And at the same time, in the same place, doing the same thing that we're doing.
Yeah. I know this is going to sound, heretical and people will call me, completely nuts for it, which is fine. It's okay. I don't mind. But we have evidence, albeit anecdotal, and some of it no longer physically exists, and it was gathered in the 19th century, a lot of it, that our maybe not necessarily, actually our species, because their bones, their footprints and tools and all that, which are human-sized, go back hundreds of millions of years. And people say, that's just insane, that's stupid, that's crazy, that's clearly not true. And I just stop and say, why? And I'm not very,
like asking the question, why do you think it's crazy?
Yeah. I'm not an agitator. I just want to know, because the thing, and I always like to think of the coelacanth, my favorite fish in the whole world. It's my favorite fish. It disappeared from the fossil record for 65 million years.
Extinct it was.
Nothing was
completely extinct.
Yeah, not saying it isn't part of the fossil record.
According to the West,
right?
completely extinct.
Yeah. it went at the same time as the dinosaurs. So this coelacanth, which was like an armored bone fish, really. It's like, it's like not very good to eat, but primitive fish. Still around. It's the same fish. It hasn't changed. It's the same exact fish. So you can't say it evolved or became something else. No, it's a fish still. Same goes for crocodiles, right? And a whole bunch of other animals. Yes, they've changed in size, but guess what? They're still crocodiles.
Sharks.
So my point here is...
That's
sharks.
Right. Yeah.
My point here is, and funny, they're all bigger then, right? Which is another interesting component here. My point is that the human race, right? We believe, Lucy and this and that, and we think that's happening. Well, we don't really know. We found a few bones here, and we found a few bones there, and we start building a theory, and we call it this, and we call it that, and there's evolution, and everything marches from there. But in truth, there isn't really a hell of a lot of evidence pointing in any which direction. And if there were bottleneck events, when the human species was wiped out or nearly wiped out, in fact, maybe it was wiped out several times and then reseeded. And the ancient stories, right, the ancient myths, bear that out because they're all talking about that.
That's what they do. Event,
right? Several events. I mean, if you look at the ancient cultures, both from the east and from the west. When I say west, I mean the Americas. They all talk about previous worlds, 4 worlds, 8 worlds, 6 worlds, 2 worlds, whatever. But there were worlds before this one, and they all died. One, the one before this one apparently died in water, right? And this one will die in fire. That's what they call it, right?
Yeah, not far for that.
Well, no, but the point is that if I believe we'll eventually have to push it back millions.
Oh yeah, completely.
If not tens of millions of years, simply because of the evidence that is still in existence. We see it. It's there.
So, Mackie, think about it. If you and I carved perfectly mirror-faced granite blocks, how long would it take for it to look like Pumapunku?
Oh, quite a while.
Quite a while, right? So you can't imagine, because it doesn't get much rain where it is, you can't imagine how long it would take to actually to do that. The evidence and the things we're finding everywhere, and that shows that it's been a long time. Mackie, that the poor florist now, who used to be an archaeologist, who
Elizabeth Steen McIntyre. Yeah.
Thank you. Who also found what would be working tools and evidence that humans existed the American continent back at the same time as Lucy's bone was found, but only accepting Lucy because it seemed to be a precursor to humans rather than there being, an intelligent species that were able to, change their environment. So that kind of thing, Mackie, when you add all of this up, it totally... I'm on board with there maybe being cycles and that, sine wave of a society, probably global, to it being wiped out or nearly wiped out, and then re-emerging again and developing all the things we developed, thinking we've done it for the first time. You can imagine if we have a billion planets with intelligence on it in the universe, how many times the wheel's been invented.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Right? How many times fire was invented? Not for those people that lived underwater so much. But for those other species out there, let alone understanding that we're not the first time around. I think once you've got it, once you get past that, I think that allows you to then start to. I think that's the first barrier, is understanding that it's quite possible that we're not the first to invent these things. Just knowing in the last 2,000 years, a taxi in Roman times where you put marbles in a little cup, and as you drove, it turned gears, and the marbles would fall into it like a vessel, and then at the end of the journey, they'd count how many marbles were there, and you'd pay them in a certain amount. That's a cab. I didn't get a cab, right?
Yeah.
For us to wait for cars to be invented, for people not to have them, to want to be able to rent the short-term use of one to get home, and we thought we made them up first time, but it was done less than 2,000 years ago. You've got to think, hey, I think I do believe totally that we're not the first.
Oh no, but this is funny, right? Look, I do quote the Bible a lot, right? To me, the Bible is a collection of ancient wisdoms and insights. That's what it is for me. I know people feel differently, and they see God revealed, and Jesus, His Son, and so forth, and that's good. It's okay. I mean, I get it.
Do what you
want.
want.
Not for me, though.
Think
right?
what you want.
Yeah, but it's not for me, right? And I don't want to. I mean, each to their own. It's all goodness, but there's a lot of wisdom and power to be found in all ancient texts, right? And what shine you give it, or which way you look at it, is entirely up to you. And you're right, Dave. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. There's everything that we do, everything we think we've invented, we may not have invented, right? I don't know. It's some things probably are new. Maybe we've done things differently. I believe technology was different in ancient times, and different civilizations had different expressions of technology. We know this because we look at things today, and all I can say is why, not how, or even when or who, but I want to know why. Why would you do it this way? It doesn't make sense.
In direct relation to megalithic structures. Correct. And the size of stones.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that
100%.
we even embark upon it. But it's a preposterous idea it is to make stones and cut stones so large and demand that they do it. And that's the only way to build. Good God. Yeah. I said, no, thanks. But good. I'm going to build mine out of small bricks. I'm going to make bricks.
That's it. But that's right. In fact, the Chinese Wall, one of the most, we know this was built, one of the most impressive constructions that we know of in historical times was entirely made from bricks. And it depended on the Chinese ability to manufacture bricks by the millions. And they did. Now, the Chinese Wall in itself was a complete failure, and I might tell you guys that story at some other time. But for the way it was, for the original reason it was conceived, while it was never conquered or breached, ultimately, when it came to defending the Chinese, I think it was the Han Chinese, the Ming Chinese, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look it up. But when it came to that, it completely failed. For various reasons.
I just want to bring it back to my surprise in the piece that I've just read out, and that is Stickle Blades. Yeah, right. So when do we think, you and me, Meki, or even Wikipedia, right? When do you think that sickle blades were invented in our modern society?
With the advent of the Bronze Age, I should think, which would have been sometime around 8,000-10,000 years ago, right? Yeah, at the earliest.
Yeah, but we're finding it 20,000 plus years ago.
Bingo. We don't even let these guys have metal working at that time.
No.
Oh no, you don't understand, Mickey. There were obsidian sickle blades. Oh, okay, sorry. Much easier to work with obsidian.
But when do you need a sickle blade? You don't need that when something's randomly growing somewhere. You need it to cut en masse, and en masse would be that you've planted and you've got farming.
Yes.
That's the only time it's of any use.
Correct.
So. Correct. It's. I think it's pretty tough. I think the argument is pretty tough against the civilization doing it.
Yeah.
I couldn't support an argument that says, they were just hunter gatherers and they did nothing in particular.
Yeah. Look, it's again, we are confronted with the genius of things we see. It's there. I mean, you can't argue it away. I mean, the physical evidence is there. You can argue about stories. You can argue about opinions. But if something is there like a rock, right? It's random. You're 100% correct, Dave. It's completely random, right? But the thing is, and you're right, also, Dave. We all the major archaeological finds that we make are either pure luck, or they come in the wake of some amateur having a passion, like Schliemann finding Troy, following what Homer wrote, in Homer the poet. And he wrote the Iliad, he wrote the Odyssey, and Schliemann read it, German. He wasn't a trained archaeologist, but he thought, okay, well, he says it's here, so why do we start digging over there? And lo and behold, they did find Troy. In fact, they found 7 iterations of Troy. I went to Troy myself when I was a small child and got a little wooden horse that I bought from there. So
nice.
It's a tourist item. Also, the statue of the thinker I bought there. But yeah, I remember walking around there because it was near my hometown, or my father's hometown in Turkey, Troy, and we went there. There was a replica wooden horse, like I guess life size. You can climb up in it and look around.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. But one of my earliest memories of going on holidays, I was probably, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, something like that. But these are all either pure luck finds, again, I think about the mechanism of Antikythera. I mean, some sponge divers.
Yeah.
Decide to go diving, find a wreck, find this thing. They bring a whole bunch of stuff up, but this thing is all crusted over. But just think of it. The Mediterranean is massive. It's not the Pacific or Atlantic Ocean, but it's huge.
It's not a bathtub.
It's not a bathtub. And there would be tens of thousands of ships shipwrecked somewhere there, right? Yeah. All over the place. No, we find the one that has the only mechanism of Antikythera that was ever made.
That's right, sure.
How lucky are we?
Mackie, what's the temple where they did the monatomic gold?
That was in Israel. What is today Israel?
On the top of the hill, made of stone.
Yeah, that's correct. It is in what is today Israel, formerly Palestine, and I have to look up Lawrence Gardner.
That's right, Lawrence Gardner. Yeah. But yeah, why don't you take us through the mysterious origins of crop plants?
Before we go too far afield and go over ground we've chewed over so many times. So yes, look, and this is by Will Hart. Will Hart wrote a book called The Genesis Race, and I've got it. It's a really good book. If you get the chance to read it, Will Hart, Hart, The Genesis Race, and this article was written by him, an extraction, if you will, of the Genesis Race book. Mysterious Origins of Crop Plants. It was the best treatment I could find on this particular puzzle. Nice. Is what it is, because no one else will touch it the way he did. Today, and I'm now quoting from the text, modern plant geneticists are performing what would have been deemed impossible a century ago by creating new hybrid plants that have never existed before in nature. We noticed the GMOs, genetically modified
adding
crops.
fish oil to a plant to make it more hardy in cold weather. Yep.
100% glow gene. Why? Because we can. As incredible as it may seem, a new type of corn, it's called BT corn, actually the combination of a bacteria and normal corn is already in the fields. Why was the bacteria injected into the genes of a corn, you would ask? Because Bacillus thuringiensis helps the new hybrid plantaria fight off worms. How is the designer plant like BT corn created, you might ask? Technicians carefully take genetic material from the bacteria, isolate specific parts of its DNA, and insert it into the DNA of corn. And the CRISPR technology apparently makes that all a lot easier these days. Then the desired transformation is achieved in a tissue culture, technically referred to as transgenic plants. Designer vegetables involve the transfer of DNA from one organism to another. These days, that's what we do. The hybridization seeks to improve the plant, at least from a human perspective. We are already creating plant animals as well. Why then, you might ask, is it so far-fetched to envision an advanced race, hundreds of millions of years more sophisticated than we are, genetically engineering life on Earth? In fact, it is a plausible scenario, as Sir Francis Crick showed in his book, Life Itself. And Will Hart will attempt to prove the same in his Genesis Race book. Most soybean plants grown in the US now have been genetically altered to survive the application of powerful herbicides. BT corn is widely grown and, as shown above, was engineered to produce its organic pesticide, thereby rendering the plants poisonous to earworms. Growth hormone has been isolated in bovine DNA and inserted into pigs to increase their weight rapidly and to reduce fat. Dolly, I'm sure we all remember Dolly, the sheep, the first genetically cloned sheep, in fact, has already paved the way for other biogenetic experiments with animal cloning. Human cloning not far behind, and I would say here at this point that we probably have done this already.
They released that a number of years ago. Yeah, the restrictions, yeah.
Oh, completely. But I think it's a lot more.
What's going on?
Right. Now, this combination alien garden, if you want to call it, and Twilight Zone barnyard is not all that lurks on our high-tech farms of today. Just beyond the perfect rows of uniformly green, identical corn plants is a patch of ground in the Midwest in America, enclosed by an electric fence. The small 10-acre plot has been planted with a test crop, or rather, a genetically engineered farmer crop, a crop that has been created to make a human enzyme. It is hoped that the new hybrid corn will produce lipase, an enzyme used in treating cystic fibrosis. Farming, with the PH here, in reference to pharma, the practice of altering corn, tobacco, and other plants to make drugs for humans and animals has been getting a lot of attention in the biotech industry and attracting plenty of controversy. Reporter Lucinda Fleeson wrote earlier that year, which was back in 2004, 2005, when Genesis Race was published. The article was titled "A Cure for the Common Farm." It was published in Mother Jones in April 2003. However bizarre and potentially risky these biogen experiments are, yeah, that's right, genetically modified foods or organisms, GMOs, and farming are sources of controversy and bitter debate in Europe. However, they have not received the press coverage in America, where their presence is much greater. It may seem that Will is writing this article to either raise awareness of GMOs, to alert you to their potential dangers, or to sing the gee whiz praises of our newest industry. However, none of those is his actual intent. His concern is altogether different. He wants to know, and so do I and Dave, by the way, and I'm sure you do as well, how exactly did we get here so quickly? You know, we can recall the days when horses were harnessed to pull plows and manure fertilized our fields. I mean, you know, if you're a small-time farmer, then you probably still use manure. In fact, the form of agriculture was developed in Sumer, right? This particular, like what we have been, you know, calling agriculture for the last 4,500 years, was developed in Sumer. What happened since the 1950s? How did we get here? In the broadest sense, from the wild grasses, the ancestors of modern cereal crops, to these frankenplants, you know, these genetically modified organisms. If you think that our modern geneticists and plant scientists know the answers and can point to the evidence showing you how our primitive Stone Age ancestors domesticated wild plants, you are a victim of a scientific shell game. This is what you're supposed to assume. And by the way, this scientific shell game is going on all the time. It's whenever you hear, oh, that's what the experts say, or it is commonly understood or known. Whenever you hear that, be very, very concerned, because we have no idea. However, the history of plant domestication is fuzzy, full of missing links and logical inconsistencies, though the public is given the impression that the history of agriculture holds no real mysteries. We are told in our history and anthropological textbooks that our first civilizations were spawned on the heels of the agricultural revolution, which occurred in major river valleys. What the textbooks fail to tell us is that our Stone Age predecessors did not harvest and eat the seeds of wild grasses during their long sojourn through the Paleolithic era. They were hunter-gatherers who subsisted on leafy greens and lean muscle meats. How come they suddenly figured out how to domesticate and turn into major food sources about 5,000 BC, some 7,000 years ago? How did that happen? And now, in fact, 20,000 years ago, right? As we've learned. This raises some obvious and very sticky questions concerning the period of trial and error, experimentation and development that must have gone into domesticating wild wheat into bread wheat and wild corn into the domesticated variety. Let us begin with the enigma of modern corn plant, right? Of the modern corn plant. The humble origin of corn remains mysterious because the ancestral wild plant has never been located. It is an established scientific fact that corn is a cultigen, which means a plant engineered by humans. This means that it has become so altered by humans that it cannot reproduce naturally and is entirely dependent upon man's, or humankind's, continued cultivation. Bananas are very much the same, by the way. In short, it is now a man-made plant and has been for some time. Scientists have not been able to trace the lineage of corn to the ancestral wild plant. We haven't found the wild corn. We haven't.
The term is believed to have come from wild grass.
Yeah, that's what we think. How can this be if the agricultural revolution only occurred 7,000 to 8,000 years ago? Corn is a form of wild grass, as Dave has just pointed out, as are the majority of the other major crop plants. There is no good reason for the ancestral variety to have vanished and or become extinct. 10,000 years may seem like a long time in human terms, yet it is a very short time indeed in terms of the evolution and lifespan of plant species. There are ancient plants that have existed continuously, without changing, for hundreds of millions of years. If you believe that our ancestors domesticated crop plants, you have to start by assuming that people without any agricultural experience were brilliant enough to select and breed the best wild seed candidates to turn into major cereal crops. And I want to quickly say here, and they must have had an enormous foresight. The foresight exhibited by our ancestors, allegedly, would have been phenomenal. Forget genius. Genius doesn't even describe this level of sophistication. It is a historical fact that in spite of 5,000 years of continuous agricultural development, we have not genetically bred a new major crop from a wild species.
Yeah.
Just how ingenious were our Stone Age predecessors who performed this agronomic feat without any agricultural or genetic knowledge? Okay? No gene splicing here. Basing the agricultural revolution on the notion that people who lacked any understanding of the scientific basis of plant breeding created seems a very shaky premise. Skepticism is warranted due to the fact that if it actually occurred, this was the riskiest of gambles. We've discussed this as well, since it presented a complete departure from the only way of life and only food sources that Stone Age people knew. Because, I mean, once you go down agriculture, it's very labor intense and you can't go out hunting that much anymore, right? But first, let's step back to an earlier point and ask how we know that 100,000 generations of Stone Age humans did not eat wild grass seeds. Our guts are still not adapted to digest uncooked grains. After all, we're not birds. Okay. In addition, our Paleolithic ancestors lacked the technology to harvest, thresh, process, and cook wild grass seeds. Well, at least the technology we allow them, in the scientific community. Yeah. The seeds of wild species are minuscule, and they are attached to the seed heads, making them difficult to harvest and hardly worth the effort. In fact, rice is still harvested by hand and planted by hand. It's one of the most labor-intensive crops on the planet. It's tough.
And water-thirsty plants.
Oh, so water-thirsty.
Only overtaken by ginger.
Yeah. These are little-known facts that raise deeper issues. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors mainly subsisted on leafy greens and lean muscle meats. If they lacked an extended experience with wild grasses, how did they know which ones to select to turn into wheat, rye, corn, barley, rice, blah, 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 all of them, right? In other words, these are still the principal food crops that our civilizations are based upon, Dave.
Yeah, I know. Thinking about the origin of the corn people from South America, Becky, that's just been echoing in my mind the whole time you've been reading. Yeah, I know. So they had storage vessels they made to store the corn they harvested to get them through the time when the crop didn't grow. And they're the cave dwelling, the people that lived in like a cenote wall. You've seen those people, right? The cliff people or whatever they're called, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know what I mean. Yeah. So after at least 5,000 years of continuous agriculture, we do not seem to have improved upon the first selections of our scientifically ignorant ancestors. That hardly seems logical. This amazingly, prescient? Yep. Selection of wild seeds seems not only more than a little surprising, it looks to border on being a minor miracle. There are an estimated 195,000 flowering plants that they could have turned into food sources, and primitive man chose less than 0.01 of those, I suppose, percent, to base agriculture upon, no less. This happened at a point in time when people had no concept of domesticating plants or animals, which means no experience with artificial selection. To further appreciate the paradox that this situation imposes upon us, we have to understand domesticated crop plants are nothing like their wild ancestors. Farmers have long known this fact. Unless you're a farmer, don't make a point, just absorb it. The differences are so great that most of the specific ancestral locations of our cereal crops remain a mystery. We must ponder what this really means. What are the implications of our scientists not being able to trace the specific wild ancestor of modern corn, wheat, rye, barley and rice? When we look at the problem of how our ancestors, lacking in both tools and knowledge, domesticated wild plants, it is really tantamount to pondering how the Great Pyramids were conceived, designed, engineered and constructed with stone tools and primitive methods. There is something out of focus in the picture we have of the history of civilization on this planet. How and when agriculture and precision engineered architecture were developed and by whom. It is as if our ancestors were gathered around a campfire inside a cave, and one was using his hands and fingers to tell stories by throwing shadows against the wall 1 minute. Then the next minute, they were watching satellite TV and giggling giddily channel surfing. That is how great the gaps are between the late Stone Age and the birth of agriculture and civilization. How were these quantum leaps made, and where is the evidence to support the orthodox theory that humans engineered them? The real problem with the orthodox scenario is the lack of a long incubation period during which early humans experimented with selective breeding and with constructing megalithic stone monuments. Agriculture should, and not doubt actually does, extend back tens of thousands of years and not the 9,000 that modern science contends.
And Dave, as we have learned already, we have pushed it back to 20,000 years. And when we first brought this to you as show number 5, the article that refers to agriculture being 20,000 years old didn't exist yet.
There you
it was
go.
written in 2000. It was written in 2015, Dave.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Our show, and our show didn't. Our show aired in 2010, I think, for the first time. So, as we have said, and we will maintain, and we will keep saying, these dates are going to get pushed back for the very simple reason it doesn't make any sense otherwise. It's simply, and we can't just say, oh well, no, we all know what happened here. This is what happened. Blah blah blah. No, not at all. But let's keep going. I think we've got quite a bit of time still, and we can share some more information. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit we can still share here. And this is around. This is ancient agriculture in search of the missing links. Again, from Will Hart. Is the inescapable evidence of a lost fountainhead of civilization to be found growing in our fields? Okay, again, Will Hart. One of the most curious aspects of history's mysteries is that there's anything mysterious to puzzle over. Why should our history be full of anomalies and enigmas? That's a fair point. We've become conditioned to accept these incongruities and mysteries, but if we turn the situation around, it really does not seem to make sense. We know the histories of America, Europe, Rome and Greece with some precision back 3,000 years. We know pretty much what happened. Just as we know our own personal histories, we would consider it very odd and unacceptable if we did not. However, when we go farther back into prehistory, into further than, let's say, Babylonia or Sumeria and ancient Egypt even, matters become more difficult. There can be a few possible explanations, and we've shared them with you, but let's see what Will Hart says. Our ideas and beliefs about the way history happened conflict with the truth. Secondly, we have collective amnesia for unknown reasons and or some combination maybe of both. And I would suggest that both are true. The truth we don't know, and for some unknown reason we do suffer from amnesia as a species. Imagine that you woke up one morning with complete amnesia, no idea of how you got on this planet, and no memories at all of your own past. We are in an analogous situation regarding the history of civilization, and it is just as disturbing. 150 years ago, much of the history in the Old Testament was considered pure fiction, including the existence of Sumeria, which is the biblical Shinar. Akkad and Assyria as well were thought to be complete fiction. But those forgotten pieces of our past were discovered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries when Nineveh and Ur were found. Their artifacts have completely changed our view of history. Until fairly recently, we did not know the roots of our own civilization. We had no idea who might have invented the wheel, agriculture, writing, cities, or any of the rest of it. Would you simply accept the situation if you had amnesia, or would you do everything in your power to reconstruct your past and your identity? It seems there's something we are hiding from ourselves. Or, I submit here, this is me, Mackie speaking, someone is hiding it from us. Some will say it was a mind-wrenching visit by ancient astronauts. Others will argue there was an ancient human civilization destroyed by a cataclysm. In either event, we have apparently buried and forgotten those episodes because the memory is too painful. And that is probably true. But I think we didn't bury it. I think it was taken from us. The memory was taken from us and has now been kept hidden from us as well. It is curious that we have developed the capability to send space probes to Mars and to crack the human genome and even to clone ourselves, but we're still fumbling around trying to understand the mysteries of the pyramid cultures of prehistory and of how we made the quantum leap from the Stone Age to civilization in the first place. It simply doesn't add up, Dave.
Yeah, that's right. So why should we, as a species, not have maintained the threads directly and concretely linking us to our past? Additionally, we have not asked all of the right questions. It never hurts to go back to basics and review everything you think you know and what the real facts are. After the last ice age, something strange occurred, and the human race went through a sudden transformation, put my teeth back in, that sent our race into unknown territory. We are still reaping the consequences of those explosive events. Let us go back and set the stage of early human evolution as science depicts it unfolding. Our ancestors found themselves in a world full of natural wonders, facing the challenges that nature set before them, all having to do with basic survival. To begin with, they had no tools, and no choice other than to meet the challenges head on, just as other animals did. We have to keep the realities of this background in perspective. We know exactly how Stone Age people lived because many tribes around the world were still living in this manner during the past 500 years, and they have been studied intensely and extensively. We know that humanity was fairly homogeneous throughout the Stone Age. Even 10,000 years ago, people lived pretty much the same way, whether they were in Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia, or the Americas. They lived very close to nature, hunting wildlife and gathering wild plants, using stone tools and stone, wood, and bone weapons. They had learned the art of making and controlling fire, and they had very accurate and detailed knowledge about the habits of animals, the lay of the land, nature's cycles, and how to distinguish between edible and poisonous plants. The purple berries taste like burning. This knowledge and their way of life had been painstakingly acquired over millions of years of experience. Stone Age humans have been wrongly portrayed and misunderstood. They were not stupid brutes, and they would And there would be no modern mind and no modern civilization without the long evolution they went through to establish the basis for all that would eventually happen. They were keenly aware, entirely in communion with nature, and unquestionably stronger and more muscularly robust than we are today. In reality, the natural world we inherited from Stone Age man was entirely intact. Everything was as pristine and virginal as it had been during millions of years of evolution. Nature bestowed her bounty upon those early humans, and they learned to live within the natural framework. Meki.
Viewed from a statistical perspective, the human status quo is the hunter-gatherer culture that we lived in for 99.99% of our existence as a species. At least according to modern science. It is very easy to understand how our remote ancestors lived. Life changed very little and very slowly. Early men adapted and stuck with what worked. It was a simple but demanding way of life that was passed on from generation to generation by example and oral tradition. There really does not seem to be much mystery about it, but that all starts to change radically after the last ice age. Suddenly a few tribes began to embrace a different way of life, giving up their nomadic existence. They settled down and started raising certain crops and domesticating several animal species. The first steps towards civilization are often described but never really examined at a deep level. What compelled them to change abruptly? It is more problematic to explain than we have been led to believe. The first issue is very basic and straightforward. Stone Age people did not eat grains, and grains are the basis of agriculture and the diet of civilization. Their diet consisted of lean wild meats and fresh wild greens and fruits. We will be looking at the evolutionary discordance from a general standpoint by examining the mismatch between characteristics of foods eaten since the agricultural revolution that began 10,000 years ago and our genesis prior 2 million year history as hunter-gatherers. The present-day edible grass seeds simply would have been unavailable to most of mankind until after the domestication because of their limited geographic distribution. Consequently, the human genome is most ideally adapted to those foods that were available to pre-agricultural man. This presents us with an enigma that is every bit as difficult to penetrate as the building of the Great Pyramid. How and why did our ancestors make this leap? As they had little to no experience with wild grains, how did they know what to do to process them, or even that they were indeed edible? That's a very good point. Beyond that, by the time of the abrupt appearance of the Sumerian and Egyptian civilizations, grains had already been hybridized, which demands a high degree of knowledge about and experience with plants as well as time. If you have any experience with wild plants or fruits, or any experience of farming, then you know that wild breeds are very different from hybridized cultivars. It is well established that hunter-gatherers had no experience with plant breeding or animal domestication, and it should have taken much longer to go from zero to an advanced state that historians insist it did. We must ask, where did their knowledge originate? How did Stone Age men suddenly acquire the skills to domesticate plants and animals and do it with a high degree of effectiveness? We find purebred dog species like Salukis and greyhounds in Egyptian and Sumerian art. How were they bred so quickly from wolves? The following issues make the conventional explanation difficult to support. 1. Mankind's slow process of progress in the Stone Age, and 2, the sudden creation and implementation of new tools, new foodstuffs, and new social forms that lacked precedence. Now we're coming to the end of our hour here, or 2 hours I should say, so we should leave it here. We might even go back a little bit and share with you next time where we started, but the key thing here is to understand that we simply don't know how it all started. We don't know what prompted agriculture, and we've shared this with you before. I believe agriculture is the answer to the question of cities. So somebody said cities, right? The answer is agriculture. You want cities? You need agriculture. Mm-hmm. What was cities the answer to though? And in my opinion, the answer, so the question to which cities was the answer to was workforce. We need a workforce in a place. In a place. People have to be in a place. They have to be here all the time, right? So all of a sudden, people were required to be in a place for forever, whatever, for a long period of time. They couldn't walk around anymore, and we have to feed them. So the answer is agriculture. So then, what purpose would have changed them to that piece of land or wherever they were? Right? Is it mining? Is it some other purpose?
Construction.
We understand construction. We understand from the very ancient texts that we've discussed with you previously. Yeah, the Atrahasis, Epic of Atrahasis, etc., that in fact it was